So I used to be an iPhone hater. I used to look down on people who owned an iPhone, used an iPhone on a daily basis, only because I had an Android. And I thought, how could you use anything else different when this is superior? Android is more affordable, more customizable, more consumer friendly, etc., etc. But here's why today I'm no longer an iPhone hater, and spoiler alert, mostly comes from growing up and having a different perspective on life. You know, my phone story started when I was in like 2nd or 3rd grade, which, come to think of it now, kids today start using their phones way earlier than that. But at the time, my dad recently upgraded from a Nokia 3310, which he then gave to me, and I remember I was so happy. Yeah, the tech was very simple at the time, but you know, as a kid, you're so fascinated, and I remember setting up different wallpapers and listening to pre-installed ring sounds that are pretty iconic now, and of course playing hours and hours of Snake, as well as a quite underrated game that often gets overshadowed by Snake called Space Impact. Anyway, so I had that phone for a while and I was very happy with it, and in a true Nokia fashion, my family still has it and it still works to this day, like no joke. Those things were built to last. I then moved on to a Samsung phone which had better colors, and in 2012 I got a Nokia 2700 Classic, and finally in around 2013, 2014 my brother gave me his Samsung S2. So my phone journey was kind of gradual. I was just getting phones from my parents as they upgraded their phones, which I'm sure many of you can relate to. But when I got my Samsung S2, man, that was such a big upgrade from the Nokia 2700, it was crazy. It was my first experience with apps and very early Android launchers and things like that. You could even take semi-decent photos with it, and texting with my friends was easier, and of course you could even watch YouTube on it, which again, you couldn't do on that Nokia. Honestly, I really loved it. That's when I really became an Android fan. Then in 2015, an unfortunate thing happened and I dropped my S2 into the toilet. That was a very sad day for me, not gonna lie. I've even ashamed to admit that one of the first things I did was put the thing into a bag of rice expecting it to work, and as you can imagine, it didn't work. And so yeah, I was looking for a new phone, and it was just around the time when the OnePlus One was coming out. It was the perfect storm because the buzz around it was huge. If you were on the internet around 2014, 2015, everyone was talking about this Android flagship killer and how it has this awesome Snapdragon CPU that expensive phones have, and it has a nice camera and the design was awesome. I probably rewatched that MKBHD OnePlus One review like 15 times. I mean, truly, this phone felt perfect, so I bought it, and it was very expensive because where I live, these phones weren't readily available at the time because OnePlus as a brand was mainly focused in China and US as their main markets, so I definitely overpaid, but man, let me tell you, to this day, it was my favorite phone ever. It lived up to all the hype, except maybe perhaps the camera wasn't the absolute best. But what I loved about the phone was how OnePlus at the time and its founder, Carl Pei, who runs the Nothing phones now, they kind of low-key encouraged you to try and install different ROMs on your phone, if only because it wouldn't void your warranty. I very specifically remember checking their website for that because yes, that's when I also ventured into the full geek Android custom ROM journey, and I think that was the height of my Android fanboyism, if we could call it that. I was testing different ROMs, optimizing my phone, even using different kernels and underclocking my CPU to get better battery life. And now if you could just stop for a minute and think about the type of person I was. I mean, I was obsessed with this newfound hobby and interest, and I was very attached to it to the point where I built up this elitism feeling of owning this custom phone. It felt special. Just like having Surfshark feels special as well. Surfshark is probably the best known for its VPN, allowing you to connect to over 100 countries all over the world to mask your IP, but today it's actually more than that. It also includes an antivirus, Surfshark Search, Alert, as well as the newest edition called Alternative ID. It can generate anonymous information for when you want to sign up on websites or services without using any of your real data. So really, Surfshark is my #1 tool for privacy, and it can be yours as well. With our special code Academy, you can get 3 months free when buying your subscription, which makes a good deal even better. I'll leave a link in the description below if you're interested, and now back back to the video. 2015 was an interesting year for me. My close friend at the time shocked me when he got an iPhone 5S. And to provide a bit of context again, iPhones were very expensive where I lived because they had to be imported. So the 5S, when he got it, it wasn't even that new anymore. The iPhone 6 had already come out, so I was confused, but more so, I was a little angry. I honestly felt this feeling of frustration, like how can you buy this product that is A, already outdated, B, it costs an arm and a leg, and C, there's better alternatives, which obviously in my eyes was an Android phone with better specs and things like that. Remember, Apple at the time was very notorious for putting very low amounts of RAM in their phones, and you could even say that they still do it to this day. So yeah, that was the height of my Apple hate, which persisted for a very long time. I regretfully remember talking to my friend, trying to convince him to switch sides and such, talking all this nerdy stuff about Android. Now, thankfully, my friend didn't budge. He was enjoying the iOS experience, and I believe he still does to this day. He still has an iPhone. And honestly, good for him because, you know, nobody should tell you how your food tastes. In 2016, I actually broke the screen of my OnePlus One while hanging out with friends, and ironically, because not many OnePlus Ones were around my area at the time, the repairs for the phone screen were just abnormally high. So to replace my screen, I ended up paying, it costing me around 100 euros at the time, which was ridiculous. After that, I was using my OnePlus One up until 2019 when I broke the screen again. And at this point, it was kind of outdated and I needed a new phone. So I ended up getting a Xiaomi Mi 9T, which was a great budget phone with decent specs. And I also ended up installing a custom ROM on it to make it feel more like a Pixel at this point. And you know, I was just a very die-hard Android fan back in 2019, but I started to really shift my perspective around this time. During that time, I got a job and was hanging out with a lot of what you would call tech-minded people. And what I've noticed is that many people use an iPhone where I live. And I also noticed that people were generally very happy with it. You know, they would point out things that they hate about iPhones, like the lack of customization and things like that. But when I heard legitimate tech enthusiasts that I respected saying that, yeah, it's a good phone, it's stable, it works fine. Like thinking back now, I believe that's what really changed my perspective on the whole Android versus iPhone thing. It's kind of like Michael Jordan telling you what kind of workouts you should do to become a better basketball player. You would do it because, well, it's Michael freaking Jordan. And sure, I was watching MKBHD at the time, who in his videos would point out and say like, hey, iPhones are great. But for some reason, hearing that in real life was just different. It felt different. So why am I no longer an iPhone hater? You know, I will say I still use Androids, like this Pixel, as my daily driver. I would still say it's a more fitting smartphone, OS, and device in general for me rather than an iPhone. But I think the main reason why I think I no longer hate iPhones is because it just comes down to one simple thing. Right now, I would say that both Android and iPhone, they're fairly similar overall. Price-wise, flagship Androids are sometimes even more expensive than iPhones, and camera quality is nearly equal. Performance is also very good on both phones. In the customization category, iPhone has also gotten a lot better too, and this is a great thing, because for most folks, the choice between one or another should really just come down to the price, the camera, and perhaps the storage, and simple things that most people can just compare. So all that just to say that yes, I used to be an iPhone hater. I used to hate iPhones. I used to think that they're overpriced, they're annoying to use and things like that. But when you zoom out and consider how similar phones have gotten to each other and just realizing that people have preferences of being used to one OS or another, yes, iPhones are fine. But I still see in the comments people trashing iPhone users or vice versa. And that's how this video came about, because it reminded me of those years of just being in this mindset that my phone is the best and this OS is better than yours, but that's no longer me. Now, go watch this video next where I talk about why I no longer use custom Android ROMs in 2024. And spoiler, it's because of, well, actually no, I won't tell you. Go watch the video to find out, but that'll be all for now. Take care.